So if you're watching this video, you probably missed the notes in class on the New Deal. So we'll do a quick summary of what was in those notes. As I move past the first slide here, you'll see that the New Deal was a program designed to fight the Depression. And in 1932, when they elected Franklin Delano Roosevelt, it showed that Americans at that time wanted to go away from the Republicans and Hoover and go with a change, which was the Democrats at this time. Remember that Hoover had won his election because of Republican popularity and prosperity, but obviously after the 29 crash, that popularity was eroded by the economic problems. As I move forward, Roosevelt in that election wins an overwhelming victory. He was a two-term governor of New York, but not really well known in most parts of the country. He was a distant cousin of a former president, Teddy Roosevelt. And at the time he's elected, meaning Roosevelt, the Democrats also won huge victories in the House and Senate. And again, this is probably because Republicans had been in charge of the federal government for a while. And even though there was prosperity leading up into the 20s, after the crash of the economy, people wanted a different style of leadership and different programs. And so they looked for the Democrats to really switch things up. Here's a map of the electoral victory. Again, this color here represents the areas that Hoover won because he ran against Roosevelt, not many, and everything else went Roosevelt. And you can get an idea of the big difference in the popular vote totals in that particular election. When FDR is elected, he launches what he calls the New Deal with his first 100 days, where the idea was to pass legislation that would alleviate suffering of Americans struggling with the Great Depression. And he called it the New Deal, and people, that name kind of stuck. He took office, like I said, and started the early activities, calling it the 100 days, the many programs that were passed within those first 100 days of being in office. The 100 days lasted from March to June of 33. And this is just an article from the Saturday Evening Post on the 100 days. Problems that were caused by the Great Depression, as we spoke about in the last set of notes: bank failures, unemployment, the Dust Bowl, the stock market failure, poverty, and homelessness. These were all problems caused by the Great Depression. Congress got busy right away, again in that 100 days, to pass legislation to fix some of those problems. The first thing was to fix the banks. And so what they did is they declared a bank holiday. All banks that were still running were inspected, and to make sure that they were still able to be run, that their books were clear, that they weren't failing, and that it was a safe place to put your money. Along with this, they passed the Glass-Steagall Act, which established federal deposit insurance, meaning that you could put your money in the bank, and even if the bank failed, it was insured at least up to $5,000. It also set strict standards for banks that they follow even today, and your money is still insured today, up to $100,000. More 100 days activity, they passed the Federal Securities Act, required stock market information to be accurate and truthful, and the Agricultural Adjustment Act, which raised crop prices by lowering production. Again, this is encouraging farmers to produce less, but officially raising the price through government order. You also had the TVA, which focused on direct relief to hard-hit areas and created public works projects to get Americans back to work. And this shows you a map of where the TVA affected, where these dams were built. And for each dam built, you're employing construction companies and laborers. You're basically putting people back to work, but you're paying for it through tax dollars. Along with this, we have what are known as the alphabet agencies. Most of them are works programs. Again, the PWA also put Americans back to work, constructing schools and community buildings. Other alphabet agencies, the Civil Works Administration, again, built more schools and provided salaries for teachers, and they also built 500,000 miles of roads. Along with that, you have the FHA, provided home mortgage loans and repairs with money from the federal government so that Americans could own homes or repair the homes that they were already in. Another alphabet agency is called FARA. It was the Federal Emergency Relief Agency. This was $500 million that came in direct money to Americans that were struggling with the Great Depression. So it was money for them to purchase things that they needed, and it was provided by the federal government. Another part of the alphabet agencies was the CCC. This was to take young men from 18 to 25 and put them to work building parks and roads and planting trees to stop soil erosion. They weren't paid much, but they were given room and board, and then money that they made was sent back to their families. There's also the WPA, the Works Progress Administration. This was in cities. It helped urban workers and put them back to work with public works jobs again in cities, not in the country. Along with that, the WPA built 850 airports and 651,000 miles of roads and streets and 125,000 public buildings. And for every project that they start, they put Americans back to work. Now, they're using tax dollars to do this, but they are trying to jumpstart the economy with these public works programs. To protect workers, they passed the Fair Labor Standards Act, which set a maximum hours of 44 per week, meaning you couldn't work people longer than that, and established a federal minimum wage for the first time at 25 cents per hour. One of the most important pieces of legislation out of the New Deal is the Social Security Act. It had three parts. It created an old age pension that we have today where people pay into Social Security, and then when they retire, they get money back from the federal government. It created unemployment insurance, so if people lost their job, and even now, up to 6 months, they can collect a portion of what they would normally earn while they're looking for a job from the federal government, and then send aid to families with dependent children and the disabled. Some of the legacies of the New Deal programs that are still around, the FDIC, still there. Deficit spending is something a lot of presidents have done, spending more money than we have. And Social Security is still around today, debated today, but still a program that everyone pays into through each check that they have. Some images from the New Deal, workers, more workers, right? Just images from the Depression here. Hopefully this helps you to understand what you may have missed. Again, go back through the slideshow if you need to, and take any additional notes that you need. Thank you.